You've been flexing your historical trivia at parties, but what if most of it is dead wrong? Today, we're digging up 13 ancient lies and giving them a proper burial. 1. You know how everyone loves to blame something when things go wrong? Your Wi-Fi dies, it's the ISP's fault. Your Uber driver cancels, it's the algorithm. Your favorite YouTuber disappears for 6 months, yes, the shadow ban. Well, in 19th century Ireland, when bridges kept collapsing, the villagers had a genius explanation. Fairies. Yep. Magical, tiny woodland drama queens with a flair for demolition. Now, before you laugh too hard, let's be fair, they didn't have engineering degrees. They didn't have OSHA. They didn't even have YouTube tutorials on 10 ways to not build a death trap. So when a perfectly fine-looking bridge gave up on life and crumbled, the local conclusion wasn't structural weakness. Nope, it was the fairies are angry. Imagine a medieval town hall meeting. Villager 1, the bridge collapsed. Villager 2, bad mortar? Villager 3, nope. Clearly, tiny invisible guys who hate concrete. Case closed. And here's the thing, fairies weren't just cute Tinkerbell knockoffs. In Irish folklore, they were petty, grumpy little architects of chaos. If you so much as sneezed near their fairy forts, basically old ring-shaped earth mounds, they'd allegedly curse your crops, your cows, and yep, your bridges. Fairies were like that one HOA president who fines you for having your garbage can out for 30 extra minutes. So the myth goes, engineers, builders, and farmers across rural Ireland literally avoided certain land features because the fairies might get mad. Road construction plans got changed. Houses were left half-built. Even in the 20th century, people still swore that if you bulldozed a fairy fort, bad luck was basically Amazon Prime shipping straight to your family. Which leads us to the bridges. When the ones in County Kerry started collapsing in the 1800s, locals didn't say, maybe bad design, maybe erosion. Nope. They pointed at the fairies. They thought the bridges were interfering with fairy pathways, so naturally the supernatural demolition crew went to work. But here's where the irony kicks in, modern engineers later looked at those sites and went, yeah, so, the foundations were trash. They were built on soft soil. That's why they fell. Not fairy sabotage. Turns out physics is the real goblin. It's the same logic as blaming Mercury retrograde for your phone screen cracking. Spoiler, it wasn't Mercury. You just dropped it. And here's the kicker, people still kind of believe this stuff. In 2017, there was a highway construction project in Ireland that got delayed because workers didn't want to bulldoze through a fairy fort. Like, in the age of TikTok and Elon Musk launching cars into space, people were still like, maybe let's not piss off the fairies. Just in case. That's the power of myth. It lingers. It's like that one meme format that never dies. No matter how many times you see distracted boyfriend, it keeps resurfacing. Same with blaming fairies for structural failures. So let's recap this myth in modern terms. Bridge collapses equals fairy sabotage. Crops fail equals fairy revenge. Cow dies equals fairy mood swing. Basically, fairies were the original system error 404. But the truth? It wasn't fairies. It was sloppy construction, crumbling foundations, and zero safety codes. The Irish villagers weren't cursed, they were just living in the equivalent of a bad Minecraft build. Now, don't get me wrong, folklore is awesome. It's culture, it's storytelling, it's vibes. But when your actual infrastructure relies on please the fairies, you've got problems. That's like if New York blamed subway delays on gremlins chewing the tracks. Oh wait, actually, that would explain a lot. So, the next time you hear someone say, oh, that went wrong because of bad luck. Remember, that's just a polite, PG-13 way of saying, I don't want to admit my bridge design sucked. Final twist? Fairies weren't even supposed to be builders or destroyers in the original myths. They were guardians of natural spaces. So really, blaming them for bridge collapses is like blaming Starbucks baristas for climate change. Wrong target, folks. Confession booth time. Raise your hand if you've ever blamed something on bad vibes instead of just admitting you messed up. Yeah, same. So here's your call to action. Next time your phone dies, your car won't start, or your Fortnite match lags, don't say fairies did it. Say, my engineering sucked. Way scarier. 2. You know that one friend who insists their AirPods were stolen by ghosts? Or the dude in your group chat who's convinced his PlayStation overheats because Mercury is in retrograde? Yeah, humans love blaming the unexplainable on spooky forces. Which brings us to Hoia Baciu Forest in Romania. Otherwise known as Europe's Bermuda Triangle, the creepiest forest on Earth, and the only place where Google Maps probably just gives up. Here's the myth. Compasses go haywire. Trees grow in weird spirals. People vanish. UFOs land. Time slows down. Basically, it's Stranger Things but with fewer 80s synths and more mosquitoes. For decades, tourists and locals alike swore that if you walked into this forest, your compass would start spinning like a fidget spinner on TikTok in 2017. And not just a little wobble, we're talking full 360-degree pirouettes like your compass is auditioning for Dancing with the Stars. So naturally, people assumed. Ghosts. Aliens. Portal to another dimension. Because apparently bad magnetic interference wasn't dramatic enough. But let's back up. Why does this forest have such a rep? First, the vibe. The trees really do grow bent and twisted, like they were designed by Tim Burton after a Red Bull binge. Second, a bunch of people in the 1960s claimed they saw UFOs here. Not just one drunk guy, but multiple credible witnesses. Third, people who wander too deep report nausea, rashes, and anxiety. Which, welcome to camping without bug spray. So the compass thing fit right into the perfect spooky package, a forest that doesn't want you there. Now, here's where modern science enters the chat. Because guess what? Compasses don't actually spin wildly in Hoia Baciu. Yeah. That viral claim? Totally cooked up by hype. Multiple expeditions tested it. Compasses behaved fine. They wiggled a little, sure. But not Stranger Things upside down portal wiggling. More like cheap compass from Amazon Basics wiggling. So why the legend? Simple, humans love exaggeration. It's way cooler to tell your friends. Bro, my compass went full Beyblade mode and I almost got abducted by aliens. Then. Yeah, it was off by like 2 degrees. That's not TikTok content. That's a Yelp review. But let's get nerdy for a second. There is a scientific reason why people thought compasses acted weird here. Romania, like many parts of the world, has magnetic anomalies in its soil. Translation: there's iron and other minerals underground that can slightly throw off a compass needle. So if you're hiking and your compass says westish when you swear you're walking north, boom, instant ghost story. It's like blaming lag on the Illuminati instead of admitting your Wi-Fi router is from 2009. And about those twisted trees? Again, not witchcraft. Not alien landscaping. It's environmental stress. Wind, soil shifts, fungal infections, nature just got weird. But does fungal infection sound cool on a travel blog? Nope. So people say fairy forest instead. Same with the UFOs. The 1960s were UFO mania central. Everyone and their grandma was spotting flying saucers. You know what else was big in the 60s? Psychedelics. Just saying. But here's the ironic twist, even though the compass myth is bogus, Hoia Baciu still freaks people out. Visitors claim their phones die instantly. Reality, bad signal and low batteries. They say their cameras malfunction. Reality, condensation and cheap tech. They swear they heard whispers. Reality, forests are loud, man. Wind, animals, branches, Mother Nature's got a soundboard. And yet, despite all the debunks, this forest remains one of Romania's biggest tourist draws. Why? Because people want the myth. They want to believe they'll get abducted, or at least feel a little spooked. It's horror movie tourism. Think about it, would you rather tell your coworkers? Yeah, I hiked a forest. Trees, dirt, bugs. Cool. Or, I braved Europe's creepiest forest, where compasses spin, ghosts whisper, and aliens might probe me. One of those stories gets you side-eye at the office. The other gets you Instagram followers. So, bottom line. Hoya Baciu isn't haunted. Compasses aren't spinning like slot machines. Aliens aren't setting up camp there. It's just a normal forest with some weird tree shapes, magnetic quirks, and a killer PR team. But hey, if you want to believe it's haunted, go ahead. Humans need their myths. Otherwise, we're just left with fungal infections and soil erosion. And that's way less fun. Let's modernize this with a metaphor. Hoya Baciu is like that influencer you follow who swears they woke up like this. In reality, it's ring lights, filters, and 3 hours of prep. But the myth? Way more fun. Confession booth time. Would you actually spend a night camping in Hoya Baciu knowing the myths? Or would you be the person nervously whispering, okay, but what if the compass does spin? Because let's be real, you'd still bring a backup GPS. Just in case. So here's your call to action. Next time you hear compasses spin wildly in some viral forest story, remember, it's not the ghosts. It's the geology. But hey, if geology doesn't trend, just slap haunted on it. It worked for Romania. 3. You know how politicians today will believe anything if it comes with a PowerPoint and a confident voice? Well, plot twist, Winston Churchill, yes, the bulldog prime minister, cigar in hand, World War II legend, once got hyped about a ghost army. Yep. Forget tanks, forget Spitfires, forget the whole finest hour speech. We're talking full-on invisible soldiers, smoke and mirrors style, and Churchill actually thought, yeah, this could work. Let's rewind. World War II, mid-1940s. The Allies needed to convince Hitler they were gonna invade one place, while secretly planning to invade somewhere else. Classic bait and switch. So, instead of just sending a strongly worded letter that said, hey Adolf, we'll be in Calais, don't mind us, they cooked up the wildest con job in military history. Enter, the Ghost Army. And no, it wasn't literal ghosts, although, let's be real, an army of angry Victorian phantoms would have been terrifying. This was a fake army. Inflatable tanks, wooden planes, dummy radio chatter, sound effects, the whole production. Basically, the Allies invented cosplay warfare. Now, picture this, German scouts flying overhead, looking for Allied forces. They see rows of tanks. Camps full of tents. Trucks. They report back, Ja, we found them. Thousands of troops. Reality? It was a bunch of rubber tanks that would have popped if you leaned on them too hard. It's like being catfished on Tinder. From far away, they look like a 10. Up close? You just matched with an air mattress. Here's the kicker, this ridiculous idea wasn't just tolerated. Churchill loved it. He was fully on board with the Ghost Army strategy. Think about that. The guy famous for scowling and saying, we shall fight on the beaches also signed off on a plan that basically said, we shall fight with balloons. Imagine Churchill at the planning table. Gentlemen, what we need is a battalion of pool floaties shaped like Shermans. That'll teach the Nazis. But let's not roast him too hard, because, honestly, it worked. The Germans were completely fooled. They diverted troops, wasted resources, and second-guessed their strategy all because of a bunch of inflatable toys and sound effects. Yes, World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history, was partly won by a giant game of make-believe. It's like defeating Thanos by distracting him with a TikTok dance. Now, here's where the myth gets spicy. Some people genuinely believed at the time that the Allies had real supernatural help. Rumors spread that the Ghost Army wasn't inflatable tanks, it was actual ghosts, like fallen soldiers rising from the grave to spook the Nazis. Because, of course, humans can't resist adding ghosts to anything. And you know what? Churchill didn't exactly rush to debunk it. The idea of Hitler sweating over invisible spirits was just too good. So, let's debunk the myth cleanly. Did Churchill believe in literal ghost soldiers? Nope. Did he approve an army of inflatable props and sound engineers? Absolutely. Did it save lives and trick the Nazis? Shockingly, yes. This was basically the original deepfake. Only instead of messing with people on Instagram, it messed with the entire German high command. But the irony? The Ghost Army soldiers themselves were mostly artists, set designers, and engineers. They weren't hardened warriors. They were dudes who could have been making Broadway musicals but were instead running smoke machines in Normandy. Imagine drafting for World War II and instead of charging with a rifle, you're told, "Congrats, soldier, you're on balloon duty. Don't let Jerry find out it's rubber." And here's a fun modern comparison. The Ghost Army was basically the 1940s version of Photoshop. Show the enemy a picture that looks super convincing, and they'll believe it. Except instead of catfishing one person, you're catfishing the Third Reich. Of course, the ultimate punchline is that this worked way better than it should have. German intelligence bought it hook, line, and sinker. They thought Patton himself was leading this phantom army, ready to charge at Calais. Meanwhile, the real invasion went down in Normandy, and the fake army just sat there looking intimidating, like a kid flexing with water wings. So why does this matter? Because it shows that even the most serious leaders aren't above goofy ideas if they work. We love to imagine war as this gritty, noble, hyper-rational chess game. But sometimes? It's smoke bombs, rubber toys, and a whole lot of theater. Literally. Theater. The Ghost Army was showbiz in uniform. Let's spin it forward. Would something like this work today? Probably not. Drones and satellites would see through the ruse in seconds. But back then, it was genius. And honestly, don't you kinda wish modern armies still had to rely on inflatable decoys instead of, drones and nukes? At least balloons don't cause civilian casualties. So, confession booth time. Would you have been a Ghost Army soldier, knowing your main weapon was a rubber tank and some fake radio chatter? Or would you be like, nope, I'll take my chances storming the beaches instead? Because personally, I'd take balloon duty. Worst case scenario, I'm the guy who pops a tank with a cigarette. Best case, I win the war with a circus act. Bottom line. The Ghost Army wasn't ghosts. It was inflatable tanks, sound effects, and a whole lot of allied creativity. But if Churchill had leaned into the supernatural rumors just a little harder, World War II history books would be way funnier. 4. Alright, let's start with a question. Why do rulers love shiny hats? Seriously, history is basically just one long fashion show where kings and queens fought entire wars over who got to wear the sparkliest head accessory. Divine right of kings? Nah. It's just bling envy. But here's the twist. Europe's crown jewels came with some serious bad PR. We're talking full-on cursed energy, like, congratulations, your majesty, here's your coronation. Also, enjoy your upcoming terrible death. The myth goes like this. Certain jewels were so cursed that every single ruler who wore them was doomed. Hungarian crown? Bad luck magnet. French crown jewels? Total disaster starter pack. British crown jewels? Depending on who you ask, they're basically haunted rocks. It's like the One Ring from Lord of the Rings, except instead of turning you invisible, it just made your reign suck. Let's zoom in on one of the juiciest, the crown of Saint Stephen in Hungary. This was the holy bling of Hungarian kings, used since around the year 1000. But rulers who wore it, their lives tended to end in chaos. Wars, invasions, assassinations, you name it. If Netflix made a series just on the crown's owner reviews, it'd be darker than Black Mirror. Of course, the villagers didn't say, maybe geopolitics is complicated and ruling is hard. Nope. They said, the crown's cursed. Because obviously it's the shiny object's fault. And it wasn't just Hungary. France had the famous Hope Diamond, which got blamed for a string of grisly deaths. One royal after another allegedly fell victim to it, until it eventually got shipped to the US, because apparently, if your jewel's haunted, you just FedEx it across the ocean and make it someone else's problem. Same story in England. The Kohinoor diamond, stolen from India and stuck in the British crown, got such a cursed reputation that they literally decided only queens should wear it. The thinking was, better she suffer than him. Talk about medieval chivalry. So, were these jewels actually cursed? Spoiler, nope. It wasn't ghosts, demons, or ancient hexes. It was just history being messy. Think about it, ruling a medieval or early modern kingdom was basically like playing Dark Souls on hardcore mode. You've got plagues, angry nobles, famines, rebellions, constant wars. Even if your crown was made of Legos, you'd probably still get assassinated. But since humans hate admitting life is random and awful, they needed something easier to blame. Enter the crown jewels. Because blaming politics is boring, but blaming a cursed diamond? That sells. Let's put this in modern terms. Imagine every time a CEO tanked their company, people blamed the Rolex on their wrist. Oh, yeah, Enron collapsed because the watch was cursed. Or, we lost the Super Bowl because the quarterback wore that one unlucky pair of Jordans. That's literally how medieval people thought about crowns. But here's where it gets funny. Even though everyone knew the jewels were cursed, nobody ever said, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't wear them." Nope. They just kept slapping them on their heads like, "Yeah, this killed the last 5 kings, but it looks amazing, so, YOLO." It's like that friend who keeps touching the do not touch button just to see what happens. Now, the ironic twist? These so-called cursed jewels actually boosted the ruler's brand image. If a king had the guts to wear a crown everyone whispered was haunted, it made him look tougher. Sure, the crown might kill me, but look how shiny I am. Basically, cursed bling was the original clout chasing. And the myths didn't stop with kings. Fast forward to modern times, and conspiracy theories about crown jewels still pop up. Some people swear Queen Elizabeth II's long reign was proof she broke the curse. Others claim Charles III is doomed because he wore the coronation crown. Because apparently, in 2023, we're still doing medieval chain emails but with more gemstones. Here's the real truth, the jewels weren't cursed. They were political trophies. Every time a crown changed hands, it usually meant someone got dethroned, executed, or just casually stabbed at a banquet. So of course there's blood on the jewels. They were literally the receipts of centuries of backstabbing. It's not a curse. It's history. But history doesn't trend on TikTok, and cursed diamond does. Now let's drag this into pop culture. These cursed jewels were basically like the Annabelle doll of royal fashion. Creepy, overhyped, but ultimately just sitting there. The only real curse? Greed, colonial theft, and bad decision-making. You know, the usual. Confession booth time. If you had the chance to wear a jewel that supposedly killed half its owners, would you do it? Like, imagine rocking the Hope Diamond to prom. Half the people whisper, "Oh, cursed." The other half just think you're flexing. And honestly? That's probably worth the risk. So, bottom line. The cursed crown jewels weren't cursed at all. They were just shiny things caught in messy human history, wrapped up in a spooky story so we wouldn't have to say, "Yeah, rulers keep dying because running a kingdom is hard." Or, to put it in meme terms, kings didn't die because of diamonds. Kings died because, king's gonna king. 5. You know that one time you went out just for one drink and somehow woke up at 3 a.m. still at the club, regretting life choices? Yeah, now imagine that, but you can't stop dancing. Welcome to Strasbourg, 1518. The year when an entire German town basically invented the world's deadliest rave. The myth goes like this. One woman walked into the street and started dancing. Hours turned into days. Other people joined. Soon, there were dozens, then hundreds, flailing around nonstop, sweating, collapsing, and in some cases, dying. People claimed it was witchcraft. Or maybe divine punishment. And because medieval Europe had zero chill, local officials didn't say, hey, maybe it's stress, or poisoning, or mass hysteria. Nope. They said, you know what'll fix this? More dancing. That's right. They hired musicians and built a stage. Because nothing cures exhaustion like doubling down. So what actually happened? Why did an entire town boogie itself to death? Historians have theories. Ergot poisoning, aka moldy rye bread laced with LSD-like chemicals. Basically, imagine everyone eating cursed sourdough and tripping so hard they couldn't stop moving. Mass hysteria, the whole community was stressed out from famine, disease, and general medieval misery, and one person's breakdown went viral before TikTok even existed. Religious mania, people thought they were cursed by Saint Vitus, patron saint of dance. Yes, that was a thing. No, he wasn't on Dancing with the Stars. Now, let's compare this to today. If the same thing happened in 2025, CNN would call it the TikTok shuffle plague. Doctors would diagnose it as a neurological event. And Twitter, X, would be flooded with memes of exhausted people hitting the gritty against their will. But in 1518? People were like, clearly the devil just really loves EDM. Here's the irony, the town leaders, instead of stopping the madness, encouraged it. They literally built a stage and brought in drummers, thinking the dancers just needed to shake it out until the curse ended. Imagine your doctor diagnosing you with a sprained ankle and saying, yes. Have you tried more jumping jacks? And people really did die. Accounts describe exhausted dancers collapsing, some with strokes or heart attacks, right there in the street. It wasn't just a quirky flash mob. It was lethal cardio. One priest at the time described the scene as a terrible spectacle. Translation, medieval Coachella with zero hydration stations. But here's the twist, it wasn't the only time this happened. Dance plagues popped up in other parts of Europe too, though Strasbourg was the most famous. Why? Because when one person loses control in a high-stress society, it can spread like wildfire. Today, we'd call it a viral trend. Back then, it was God's punishment. Same vibe, worse hashtags. And the funniest part? Historians aren't even sure how it ended. Some say people finally collapsed and never got up. Others think they were marched to a shrine of Saint Vitus to pray it away. Either way, the town leaders quietly decided, maybe encouraging mass dance marathons was not our brightest move. Now let's frame this with some modern analogies. The Strasbourg dancing plague was the original ice bucket challenge, except no charity, just fatalities. It was CrossFit before CrossFit. Everyone insisted it was healthy, until their bodies disagreed. It was Fortnite emotes in real life only instead of losing friends, you lost your pulse. So what's the debunk here? No, it wasn't witches cursing the town. No, it wasn't literal demonic possession. And no, Saint Vitus wasn't personally DJing from the clouds. It was most likely mass psychogenic illness, when collective stress, trauma, and belief systems manifest in physical symptoms. Basically, a medieval mental health crisis that spiraled into a dance festival. And yet, people love the spooky version. Because saying they were poisoned by moldy bread isn't nearly as entertaining as Satan dropped the hottest beat of 1518. Confession booth time. Would you have joined? Be honest. You're in the town square, someone starts busting moves, the whole crowd joins in. Do you stand there awkwardly like at a wedding reception? Or do you start flossing until you keel over? Personally, I'd last maybe 15 minutes before crying in the corner. So the next time you think you've overdone it at the gym, or at a rave, or on Just Dance for the Wii, remember Strasbourg. At least you didn't literally dance yourself into the grave. 6. Alright, let's talk about one of France's weirdest headlines, and no, it's not Frenchman marries baguette. It's 1951, and the tiny village of Pont Saint-Esprit went absolutely, spectacularly insane. I don't mean a little quirky. I mean full-on demon hysteria. People claimed they were possessed. Villagers thought they were being burned alive. Some swore they had wings. A guy literally jumped out of a window screaming he was an airplane. And the local explanation? Demons. Because obviously if a whole town trips at once, it must be the devil's party bus. Here's the setup. Pont Saint-Esprit, population a few thousand, small town vibes. One day in August 1951, dozens of people suddenly start convulsing, hallucinating, and basically acting like extras from a zombie movie. Doctors at the time were baffled. Newspapers went wild. And the villagers, terrified, started whispering, "We've been cursed. The demons are inside us." It was the French version of a horror movie trailer. This summer, evil returns to the bakery. So what actually happened? The boring truth, bread. The exciting myth, demons. You see, the main theory is that the local bakery's flour was contaminated with ergot, the same toxic fungus that grows on rye and can cause hallucinations, convulsions, and death. Basically, medieval acid trip bread. People who ate it got high without signing up for the ride. Suddenly, you've got half the village thinking they're being roasted in hellfire and the other half trying to fly off rooftops. Now, this isn't just speculation. Ergot poisoning was notorious throughout history. Some historians even think the Salem witch trials were fueled by villagers tripping on moldy rye. So Pont Saint-Esprit wasn't the first bread-based meltdown. It was just the most modern, and the most dramatic. Imagine, in the age of cars, phones, and jazz music, a French village still managed to collectively blame demons for bad carbs. And here's the best part. Because the demon theory was way spicier than oops, mold, it stuck. Some people swore the devil himself had cursed the flour. Others said witches poisoned the bakery. And, in true Cold War paranoia, some even accused the CIA of spiking the bread with LSD as a secret experiment. Yes, really. The CIA got blamed. Because if demons aren't handy, blame the Americans. Classic Europe. Let's pause for a second and imagine the conspiracy board. String from bakery to CIA mind control program. String from convulsions to Satan. String from hallucinations to aliens. This town didn't need Netflix. They had live, daily episodes of Stranger Things, French edition. But the reality check? Scientists today say it was almost certainly ergot poisoning. The symptoms line up perfectly: spasms, hallucinations, psychosis, even deaths. And ergot was a known hazard in rural France at the time. No demons. No witches. No CIA brainwashing. Just a baguette gone bad. Yet, let's be real, haunted bread is the kind of headline that sticks in your brain. Like, who wouldn't click on village poisoned by demons in croissants? It's way more fun than local fungus causes neurological disorder. Let's put it in modern terms. Imagine if Starbucks sold a batch of lattes contaminated with shrooms, and suddenly an entire city block of customers started hallucinating Pikachu in the street. Would CNN report latte mold incident? No. They'd headline, Satan strikes Seattle. Same energy. The ironic twist is that the people of Pont Saint-Esprit really believed it. They weren't play acting. There are accounts of people screaming about snakes crawling on their skin, others convinced fire was consuming their bodies, and at least one guy who thought he was turning into a horse. This wasn't a funny prank. It was sheer terror. And the worst part? At least 7 people actually died from it. Which, let's be honest, is a pretty grim Yelp review for your local bakery. Bread was chewy, service was demonic, killed my cousin, 2/5 stars. But let's not ignore the comedy. Because somewhere, there was a baker thinking, I just wanted to sell baguettes. Now I'm Satan's sous chef. And somewhere else, there was a priest thinking, ah, yes, time to perform the world's first group exorcism. So, what's the takeaway? Pont Saint-Esprit wasn't cursed. It wasn't demons. It was tainted flour causing mass hysteria. But the myth lives on because it's so cinematic. Bread that opens the gates of hell? Netflix, call me. Confession booth time. If you were in that village and saw everyone around you tripping, screaming, and convulsing, would you have blamed moldy bread? Or would you have gone fully up, demons, pack it up, we're doomed? Honestly? I'd panic too. If my neighbor suddenly thought he was a dragon, I wouldn't be Googling ergot fungus. I'd be calling Ghostbusters. So, the next time you hear about Pont Saint-Esprit, remember. The devil wasn't in the bread. The fungus was. And that's way scarier, because you can't exorcise a baguette. 7. Okay, confession time. Every country has that one tourist trap mascot. America has Bigfoot. Mexico has El Chupacabra. Australia has, well, everything that wants to kill you. And Scotland? Scotland has Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. For nearly a century, people have been convinced that in the murky waters of Loch Ness, there lurks a giant, prehistoric, camera-shy sea lizard. And not only did ordinary people believe it, actual scientists tried to prove it was real. Spoiler, Nessie played them like a fiddle. Let's rewind to the 1930s. Some guy swears he saw a dragon-like creature in Loch Ness. Newspapers jump on it like it's the Kardashians spotted at Taco Bell. Suddenly, Loch Ness goes from quiet Scottish lake to Jurassic Park. The legend explodes. Sightings pour in. Photos start circulating. And then, the big one, the famous surgeon's photograph. It showed a long neck poking out of the water. Headlines screamed, "Monster confirmed." People lost their minds. Tourism skyrocketed. Scientists packed their bags. Now here's the kicker. That photo? Yeah, total fake. It was a toy submarine with a little dinosaur head glued on. Like, straight-up middle school science fair project levels of trickery. But did that stop people? Of course not. It was the 1930s. No Photoshop. If you had a blurry photo of a stick in the water, people would call it evidence of Atlantis. And scientists, actual credentialed, PhD-wielding, tweed-wearing scientists, were like, yes, perhaps Nessie is a surviving plesiosaur from the Jurassic period. A plesiosaur. From 65 million years ago. Living in Scotland. As if a dinosaur had been hiding out this whole time, sipping tea, and politely waiting for humans to invent Kodak cameras. Here's where it gets funny. Throughout the 20th century, scientists threw everything at Nessie. Sonar scans. Underwater cameras. Research vessels. Whole expeditions with funding. And you know what they found? Nothing. Nada. Zero. Unless you count unidentified blobs, which, spoiler, usually turned out to be logs, fish, or the world's least photogenic waves. But that didn't stop the hype. In the 1970s, one expedition thought they caught a flipper on film. It made headlines worldwide. Years later, it turned out the image was enhanced so much, they might as well have drawn it with crayons. Then in the 2000s, people said maybe Nessie wasn't a dinosaur but a giant eel. Which, honestly, is less terrifying monster and more gross sushi roll. So why does Nessie keep fooling people? Because Loch Ness is the perfect stage. The water's dark, deep, and murky, visibility is terrible. You could toss a tire in there and half the town would call it proof. Plus, humans are wired to see patterns. You know how people swear they see Jesus in toast or Elon Musk in the clouds? That's called pareidolia. And Loch Ness is a pareidolia goldmine. Now, here's the ironic twist. Even when debunked, the myth only gets stronger. Remember that fake surgeon's photo? When it was revealed as a hoax in the 1990s, did people go, "Oh, guess Nessie's fake"? Nope. They went, "Okay, that photo was fake, but the monster itself? Definitely real." It's like catching your friend lying about going to the gym and still thinking, well, maybe they went on the treadmill for 5 minutes. And let's not forget the marketing machine. Nessie is worth millions to Scotland's tourism industry. Hotels, boat tours, plush toys, entire museums. Loch Ness is basically Disney World for cryptid nerds. If Nessie didn't exist, Scotland would have had to invent her anyway. So even if scientists someday proved there was nothing in the lake, you'd still see busloads of tourists staring into the water, waiting for a ripple. Let's modernize this. Nessie is like that YouTuber who got famous off one viral video, then never made anything good again, but we all keep checking in just to see if they'll return. Every blurry sonar scan is Nessie's comeback teaser. And every time it turns out to be a log, we sigh, but still subscribe. So, what's the real debunk? Nessie is not a dinosaur. Nessie is not a ghost, a spirit, or a prehistoric survivor. Nessie is, at best, a mix of hoaxes, logs, optical illusions, and very hopeful imaginations. But is Nessie real in another sense? Yeah. She's real as a story. Real as a cultural meme. Real as an icon that refuses to die. And honestly? That's more powerful than being a fishy reptile in a cold lake. Confession booth time. If you were offered a chance to scan Loch Ness with the best tech in the world and you found nothing, would you tell people? Or would you accidentally leak a blurry photo, just to keep the dream alive? Be honest. Because deep down, we all kind of want Nessie to exist. So, bottom line. Nessie outsmarted scientists not by hiding, but by living rent-free in our imaginations. She doesn't need to be real. She just needs to be believable enough. And that's why the myth is still alive today. 8. Picture this, you're the King of England. You've got armies, castles, power, a throne, all the medieval perks. And instead of worrying about, running the country, you're lying awake at night going, are those monks chanting in the hallway? Yep. Kings may have ruled Europe, but they were just as spooked by ghost stories as the rest of us. And one in particular, King Henry VIII, swore his castle was haunted by monks. Now, Henry VIII wasn't exactly a chill dude. This was the man who split from the Catholic Church because the Pope wouldn't let him divorce his wife. Then he went full Tinder addict energy, 6 wives in total, 2 beheaded, 1 divorced, 1 ghosted, literally, she died, 1 survived. So when Henry wasn't busy chopping off heads or swiping left on queens, he was building Hampton Court Palace. Big, glamorous, intimidating, but apparently haunted AF. The myth goes like this. At Hampton Court, Henry swore there were ghostly monks roaming the halls. Chanting, walking, maybe glaring at him for, dissolving their monasteries. See, Henry had this little hobby, seizing church property and kicking out monks. Which means Hampton Court, formerly linked with religious orders, was prime haunting territory. It's like if you evict 1,000 people from their apartments, then wonder why your new Airbnb keeps feeling off. Reports from the time say servants, courtiers, and even Henry himself claimed to hear phantom chants. Dark-robed figures were spotted at night. Doors slammed mysteriously. And Henry? Mr. I'll execute anyone who annoys me? He was rattled. This guy wasn't afraid of France, Spain, or the Pope, but monks singing ghost karaoke in his corridors? Terrifying. Now let's break this down. Were there actually ghost monks? Nope. What was really going on? Probably a mix of drafts and creaky doors in a massive, echoing palace. Superstitious servants who passed on scary stories like medieval Reddit threads. And Henry's own guilty conscience. Because if you destroy monasteries, execute priests, and declare yourself head of the church, maybe your brain invents some holy retribution. Basically, Hampton Court was less haunted and more medieval guilt trip. Fast forward, the ghost monk myth stuck. Even today, Hampton Court Palace is considered one of the most haunted spots in England. Tourists swear they see shadowy figures. Ghost hunting YouTubers set up cameras, whispering dramatically into night vision. Bro, did you hear that? Spoiler, it's always just the wind. But here's the irony. Henry VIII was one of the most powerful kings in history, yet he lived in fear of invisible monks. It's like Jeff Bezos running Amazon while being afraid of his Alexa speaker at night. And get this, Henry wasn't the only one. Royal hauntings are practically a tradition. Every palace in Britain seems to have at least one ghost. Anne Boleyn, Henry's executed wife, supposedly wanders around headless. Catherine Howard, another wife he executed, allegedly screams through the halls. So if monks weren't haunting Henry, maybe it was just his exes dropping by to say, "Hey Henry, remember me?" Imagine the world's most awkward ghost reunion tour, the wives of Henry VIII, now playing nightly at Hampton Court. Now, let's debunk. Were monks haunting the palace? No. Were the noises explainable? Yep, drafts, old wood, animals, and servants sneaking around. Was Henry projecting his guilt onto phantom monks? Absolutely. Because let's be honest, the man was basically haunted by his own choices. Cutting ties with the Pope, dissolving monasteries, beheading people left and right. That doesn't exactly make for peaceful dreams. And yet, the ghost monk myth made Henry more legendary. People love a villain who's so feared he's even spooked himself. It humanized him. Sure, he was terrifying to his subjects, but at night he was just another guy scared of bumps in the dark. It's like Darth Vader admitting he's scared of clowns. Still scary, but suddenly way more relatable. What's wild is how the haunting legend outlived Henry. Hundreds of years later, people still flock to Hampton Court for ghost tours. Not because they expect to see real monks, but because they want to imagine the mighty Henry VIII nervously glancing over his shoulder. The idea of power brought to its knees by superstition? That's timeless. Confession booth time. If you were Henry VIII, would you admit to your court that monks were haunting your castle? Or would you play it cool, like, nope, just the wind, while quietly clutching your rosary at night? Because personally, I'd be checking under my throne for shadowy friars. So, the takeaway? Henry VIII wasn't haunted by monks. He was haunted by Henry VIII. His paranoia, his guilt, and the whispers of a terrified court created the perfect ghost story. But hey, it makes for a way cooler palace tour. Because Haunted by Monks sells a lot more tickets than the building creaks when it's windy. 9. You ever notice how every culture has a scary dog? The Greeks had Cerberus. The Brits have Black Shuck. And Poland? Poland went all in and gave us the Wilkalak, basically a werewolf with a demon upgrade. Now, if you think werewolves are just Twilight heartthrobs who can't keep their shirts on, Poland would like to have a word. Because their version wasn't about six-pack abs and brooding romance. It was about curses, doom, and locals genuinely believing that a wolfman was lurking in the woods, ready to wreck your night. The myth goes like this. The Wilkalak wasn't just any wolf. It was a shapeshifter. Sometimes it looked like a man. Sometimes it looked like a beast. Sometimes both at once, which sounds terrifying and also deeply uncomfortable. And this wasn't the kind of creature you cured with silver bullets. Nope. According to legend, the Wilkalak was spawned from sin, curses, or witchcraft. Basically, if you didn't live your life right, you risked becoming one. Imagine living in a village where one bad decision could turn you into a demon wolf. Sorry Janusz, you missed church 3 Sundays in a row, congrats, you're fur now. Here's what made it stick. Rural Poland in the Middle Ages was rough. People were isolated, surrounded by dense forests, wolves everywhere, and limited science to explain weird stuff. If a villager went missing in the woods, wolf got them. If livestock died mysteriously, wolf got them. If your neighbor was acting weird, clearly, he was the wolf. The Wilkalak was basically the medieval version of Blame the Algorithm. And people didn't just whisper about it. They genuinely feared it. There are reports of villagers carrying charms, crosses, and even specific herbs to protect themselves from the demon wolf. Farmers would avoid certain paths at night because that's where the Wilkalak hunts. Imagine being late to work and saying, "Sorry boss, couldn't take the shortcut demon wolf territory." And your boss nods because that's a legit excuse. Now here's the twist. The Wilkalak wasn't just scary, sometimes it was tragic. Legends said if you became one, it wasn't your fault. You were cursed. Which meant the wolfman skulking around might actually be your neighbor, your cousin, or your best friend, doomed to kill sheep under the moonlight. So Poland basically invented the "it's not me, it's the curse" excuse centuries before toxic boyfriends made it cool. But let's be honest, a shape-shifting demon wolf in the forests of Eastern Europe? That's marketing gold. The myth spread so far and wide that it ended up influencing broader werewolf folklore across Europe. Germany, France, even Scandinavia picked up the idea. Suddenly, every medieval village had a wolf problem, whether real or supernatural. It was the original viral trend. Forget TikTok dances. This was demon wolf sightings, medieval edition. Okay, but let's debunk. What was really going on? Historians point to a few explanations. Actual wolves. Europe had lots of them. Hungry, scary, pack-hunting wolves. Easy to exaggerate into monsters. Rabies. Infected wolves or dogs acted deranged, foamed at the mouth, and attacked humans. Perfect inspiration for a demon wolf. Medical conditions. Some people with hypertrichosis, aka excessive hair growth, were treated like cursed wolf people. Others with epilepsy or mental illness were branded as supernatural. Church PR, calling someone a wilkalak was a handy way to say, this sinner's cursed. Nothing scares a congregation into line like demon wolf propaganda. So yeah, no literal shape-shifting wolves. Just a mix of biology, disease, and really effective horror branding. But here's the best part. Even after centuries of debunking, people in parts of rural Poland still swap wilkalak stories. Tourists go on werewolf tours. Folklore festivals celebrate the legend. And ghost hunting YouTubers head into the woods with night vision, whispering. Bro, I swear I just heard growling. Spoiler, it's always just a regular wolf. Or a stomach growl. Or both. Now, let's modernize this. The wilkalak is basically the OG jumpscare movie monster. You know how Marvel has shapeshifters like Loki? Same energy, but hairier, scarier, and without the witty one-liners. Or imagine Among Us, but instead of being SUS, you're literally a wolf demon. Red vented. No, Red turned into a wolf and ate the sheep. Game over. And here's the irony. While people once lived in terror of the wilkalak, today it's become kind of cool. Pop culture turned werewolves into sexy anti-heroes. From Teen Wolf to Twilight, the werewolf went from horrific cursed neighbor to sad boy with abs. Somewhere, a Polish peasant from the 1400s is screaming, "You're supposed to fear the wilkalak, not want to date it." Confession booth time. If you were in medieval Poland and your neighbor started acting sketchy, would you? A. Assume he's stressed, give him a break? B. Call him a wilkalak, grab your pitchfork? C. Or just mind your business, because honestly, you don't get paid enough for demon wolf drama? Personally, I'm option C, wolves or no wolves, I'm locking my door and eating pierogi in peace. So the takeaway? Poland's demon wolf wasn't real. But the fears it represented, disease, danger, and the mystery of the woods absolutely were. The wilkalak was the story people told themselves to make sense of the chaos. And let's be honest, beware the demon wolf is a lot cooler bedtime warning than wash your hands and don't pet rabid animals. 10. You know those viral TikTok food hacks where somebody says, this cake bakes itself if you just believe hard enough? Yeah. Imagine that, but instead of cake, it's a centuries-old vial of blood that magically turns from solid to liquid a few times a year. Welcome to Naples, Italy, home of pizza, chaos, and the annual blood miracle of St. Januarius. Here's the legend. Inside Naples Cathedral, there's a glass vial containing the dried blood of St. Januarius, San Gennaro if you're Italian. He was a 3rd century bishop and martyr, basically, the local celebrity saint. Every year, on 3 special dates, priests pull out this vial, hold it up for the crowd, and tada! The blood liquefies. It goes from crusty clumps to red liquid, right before everyone's eyes. The faithful cheer. Tourists gasp. CNN shows up. And the myth says, if the blood doesn't liquefy? Bad omen. Expect disasters, plagues, and Neapolitans yelling at the sky. And here's the wild part, this has been happening since the 1300s. That's right, for 7 centuries, people have been gathering to watch church-sanctioned vampire juice. And you know who believed in it? Everyone. Popes, kings, peasants, politicians, they all lined up to squint at a tiny glass vial like it was the world's first iPhone reveal. But let's break it down. Is it really a miracle? Or is Naples just the world's best stage magician? Scientists have tried to explain this thing for decades. One theory is that the vial doesn't actually contain blood at all, but a thixotropic substance, basically, a goo that behaves like a solid until it's shaken or heated, and then turns liquid. Think ketchup. Yes. For all we know, Naples has been worshipping holy ketchup for 700 years. Another theory? The blood is real, but chemical reactions and temperature shifts cause it to soften and flow. The priests accidentally warm the vial during the ritual, the crowd loses its mind, and boom, instant miracle. Basically, science keeps saying, we can probably explain this, and Naples keeps saying, shit, don't ruin the vibes. And that's the real genius here. The miracle isn't about chemistry. It's about theater. Picture it, a packed cathedral, incense in the air, everyone holding their breath while the priest tilts the vial, then movement. The clumps slide. The crowd cheers. It's WWE for Catholics. You know it's scripted, but you want to believe. Now, here's where it gets even juicier, pun absolutely intended. On the rare occasions when the blood didn't liquefy, terrible things actually happened. In 1527, it stayed solid and Naples was hit with the plague. In 1980, it stayed solid and a massive earthquake struck southern Italy. In 2020, guess what? No liquefaction. And pandemic. Coincidence? Probably. But you try telling a Neapolitan grandma it's just coincidence. She'll chase you out with a wooden spoon. Let's modernize this. Imagine if every year, Apple unveiled the new iPhone, and if the demo froze on stage, the stock market crashed the next day. That's the level of superstition Naples has with this vial. Or think of it like sports fans with lucky jerseys. If the blood doesn't liquefy, it's like your team losing before the season even starts. Doom energy. So, debunk time. Is it actual human blood? Maybe. But tests haven't been definitive, because the church won't let scientists crack open the vial, fair. Is it truly miraculous? Highly unlikely. Most experts agree it's either a natural chemical phenomenon or just clever ritual handling. But does that matter? Nope. Because the crowd doesn't show up for a chemistry lesson. They show up for the drama. And here's the irony, this miracle is great for Naples. Tourism, publicity, civic pride, it keeps the city on the map. Without St. Januarius's blood, Naples would still be famous for pizza, sure, but not for centuries of divine slime content. It's basically their Loch Ness monster, a local legend too valuable to debunk. Confession booth time. If you were standing in that cathedral, shoulder to shoulder with 1,000 hyped Neapolitans, and you saw the vial suddenly melt, would you clap and scream like it was Harry Styles walking on stage? Or would you whisper, thixotropic fluid, and get punched by the guy next to you? Personally, I'd cheer. Because sometimes the vibe is better than the truth. So here's the takeaway. The blood miracle probably isn't supernatural. But it is a masterclass in human psychology. People don't just want faith. They want spectacle. They want a sign, a ritual, something that makes the chaos of life feel predictable. And if that comes in the form of holy ketchup in a medieval test tube? So be it. 11. Okay, you know when you buy a new house and the real estate agent is like, charming kitchen, natural light, ignore the haunted floor tiles? That's basically what happened in Belmez, Spain, in 1971. Because this tiny village became world famous for one thing, ghost faces literally appearing on the floor of a family's kitchen. Not cracks. Not stains. Actual creepy, distorted, human faces, staring up at you while you tried to fry eggs. Here's the myth. One day, Maria Gomez Camara was cooking at home when she spotted a weird stain on the cement floor. But instead of just being an ugly patch of concrete, the stain developed into a face. Like, nose, eyes, mouth, the whole spooky package. Naturally, Maria did what any rational person would do. She freaked out, told her neighbors, and soon half the town was crammed into her kitchen, squinting at the ghost tile. And then, more faces appeared. Men, women, children, dozens over the years. Some looked tortured. Some looked angry. Some just looked like they were silently judging your cooking. Now, Spain being Spain, the local rumor mill went wild. Some said the house was built on an old cemetery. Others said the souls of the dead were trying to communicate. A few whispered that Maria herself had some psychic connection that made the faces appear. The house became a paranormal hotspot. Ghost hunters, journalists, even scientists showed up. It was like the Area 51 of linoleum. And here's the kicker. Every time they tried to scrub or destroy the faces, new ones appeared. Neighbors swore they saw them slowly forming over days, like some demonic Polaroid developing under your feet. Imagine trying to mop your floor and instead of getting cleaner, it just grows another haunted face. That's not Mr. Clean, that's Mr. Scream. So, what was really happening? Well, scientists weren't convinced by the whole ghost selfie explanation. Investigations were done, samples were taken, and the consensus? The faces were likely painted or chemically treated by humans, not spirits. Basically, someone was faking it. Whether it was Maria herself or opportunistic locals cashing in on tourism, we'll never know. But let's be real, people wanted to believe. The faces of Belmez became so famous that tourists flooded in. Maria's house went from small-town kitchen to international attraction. It was basically the Disneyland of ghost tiles. The more scientists said, this is probably paint or oxidization, the more believers doubled down. No, you don't get it. The faces move. Spoiler, they didn't. But believers swore they changed expressions when nobody was looking. Yeah, because nothing screams scientific evidence like a spooky Rorschach test in your linoleum. Here's where the irony kicks in. The Spanish government actually sent in investigators in the 1970s. They took samples, analyzed them, and said, yeah, this isn't supernatural. It's probably pigments or chemicals reacting with moisture. But did the public care? Absolutely not. Because government debunks kitchen stains doesn't sell newspapers. Ghost faces haunt Spanish village does. And to this day? The legend still survives. After Maria died in 2004, new owners of the house reported more faces appearing. Paranormal TV shows visit. YouTubers whisper into cameras. Tourists snap photos of the creepy tiles. It's become part of local folklore, whether it's a hoax, a psychological trick, or just stains that look a little too much like faces. Let's modernize this. The Belmez faces were basically the original creepypasta. Think about it. Weird visuals? Check. Unexplainable phenomenon? Check. People swearing it's true while skeptics roll their eyes? Check. It's Slender Man, but on your kitchen floor. Or even better, imagine if your Roomba stopped mid-clean and said, sorry, can't continue, the floor's haunted. That's Belmez. So, debunk time. Did actual spirits manifest their faces on the floor? Highly unlikely. Was it an elaborate prank, chemical reactions, or just locals having fun with pigments? Almost certainly. Did it matter? Not at all. Because the power wasn't in the truth. It was in the story. And that's the genius of it. Belmez was a small, unknown town. Overnight, it became famous. People were making pilgrimages just to stare at spooky cement. The ghost faces didn't just haunt the house. They saved the local economy. Which makes me think, maybe the real spirits were marketing consultants all along. Confession booth time. If you were in that kitchen and saw a creepy face emerging in the tiles, would you believe it was a ghost? Or would you just grab some bleach and go, not today, Satan? Honestly, if a face started forming in my apartment floor, I'd move out. I don't care if rent is cheap. So, the takeaway? The Belmez faces weren't supernatural proof. They were either a hoax, a chemical trick, or just a really good example of humans seeing patterns where there aren't any. But in the grand scheme of things? Who cares? Because now we've got one of the weirdest, most viral ghost stories in European history. And that's better than spotless floors any day. 12. Picture it, Florence, 1954. The city of Renaissance art, Michelangelo, world-class architecture, and apparently aliens who just wanted to catch a football match. Because yes, according to hundreds of eyewitnesses, an actual UFO once stopped a soccer game in Italy. Here's the setup. It's October 27th, Stadio Artemio Franchi. Fiorentina is playing Pistoiese. Thousands of fans packed into the stadium, eyes glued to the field. The match is tense. Everyone's yelling, gesturing wildly, probably chain-smoking. And then, silence. Because right above the stadium, strange objects appeared in the sky. Bright, cigar-shaped, moving slowly. Not planes. Not birds. And definitely not your average Tuscan weather balloon. Players stopped. The referee stopped. The entire stadium looked up. And according to witnesses, the UFOs hovered there for several minutes. Game over. This wasn't just a "my cousin saw something weird" story. We're talking multiple players, coaches, and thousands of fans all saying, "Yeah, we saw it." Imagine an NFL game in 2025 being stopped because an alien mothership cruised over Lambeau Field. Twitter would implode. ESPN would lose its mind. But in 1954? People were just standing there like, well, that's new. Now, here's where it gets weirder. After the UFOs appeared, something started falling from the sky. Shiny, white, cotton-like strands, drifting down over Florence. People called it angel hair. Some swore it evaporated when touched. Others collected samples that disintegrated in their hands. So the legend goes, the aliens didn't just show up. They left space dandruff. Naturally, Italy freaked out. Newspapers ran headlines like "Flying Saucers Interrupt Match." People claimed it was proof of extraterrestrial visitors. And for decades afterward, conspiracy theorists pointed to that game as one of the strongest UFO sightings in history. Because seriously, how do you argue with an entire football stadium's worth of eyewitnesses? So, was it real? Did ET really ruin Fiorentina's day? Well, let's debunk. Scientists who studied the angel hair said it was probably spider silk. Specifically, gossamer, the stuff spiders spin when they migrate in huge numbers, floating on the wind. It clumps, it glistens, and it falls from the sky. And when you touch it, yeah, it evaporates. Just like the report said. So what people saw wasn't alien dandruff. It was mass spider air travel. Yes, Florence's great UFO moment may have just been a Spider-Man convention. And the UFOs themselves? Some explanations say the bright objects could have been sunlight glinting off planes or weather balloons. Others suggest atmospheric phenomena, reflections, optical illusions. But here's the kicker, none of those explanations ever fully convinced the locals. Because when you're in a packed stadium, staring at mysterious glowing shapes above your head, weather balloon doesn't exactly cut it. Now, here's the irony. In modern times, soccer fans riot over bad calls, broken VR systems, or a player faking an injury. But in 1954, an actual UFO made thousands of Italians stop mid-yell and quietly look to the heavens. That's how you know it was serious. Italians don't pause soccer for anything. And the myth only grew. Even decades later, Fiorentina fans would retell the story. Local papers kept reprinting it on anniversaries. UFO hunters held it up as one of the most credible mass sightings in Europe. Meanwhile, skeptics kept insisting it was just spiders. Which, let's be honest, sounds way worse than aliens. Aliens? Cool. Spiders parachuting by the thousands over a stadium? Nope. Burn it all. Let's modernize this. Imagine if the Super Bowl halftime show was interrupted by glowing objects and raining webs. the memes would be unstoppable. Hashtag AlienBull would trend for weeks. And Elon Musk would definitely tweet something unhelpful like, "Told you so." So what's the real takeaway? Did aliens show up at a football match in Florence? Probably not. Was it mass spider silk migration combined with weird light conditions? Very likely. Was it still one of the coolest what-if moments in sports history? Absolutely. Because admit it, if you were there, you'd tell that story for the rest of your life. Yeah, I saw Fiorentina play once. Score was 0-0. Oh, and aliens dropped by. Confession booth time. Would you rather believe the Florence UFO was aliens watching soccer, or spiders staging a hostile sky takeover? Because honestly, I'm picking aliens. At least they might buy a ticket. So the myth survives because it's just too good to let go. Aliens interrupting a soccer game is cinematic. Spiders doing synchronized parachute ballet? Not so much. And that's the thing about legends, people will always choose the story that gives them chills over the story that gives them bug spray. 13. Okay, let's get this straight. Iceland is one of the most advanced, modern countries on the planet. They run almost entirely on clean energy. They've got free healthcare. They invented Bjork. And yet, when it comes time to build a new road, their government sometimes has to ask. Wait. Will this make the elves mad? Yes. Politicians in Iceland have literally consulted elves before approving construction projects. Here's the myth. In Icelandic folklore, there's a group of beings called the Huldufolk, the hidden people. They're kind of like elves, kind of like nature spirits, and definitely the sort of roommates you don't want to piss off. They live in rocks, hills, and lava formations. And if you bulldoze their homes? Supposedly they'll sabotage your machines, curse your workers, and make your entire construction project collapse faster than Fire Festival. And people believe this. Not just medieval peasants. Not just quirky locals in wool sweaters. Modern, educated, 21st century Icelanders. Surveys have shown that while not everyone says, yes, elves are real, a solid chunk of the population says, well, I wouldn't rule it out. Which is just a polite Icelandic way of saying, better safe than elf-cursed. Here's where it gets hilarious. There are real cases of construction being halted or rerouted because of elf concerns. In 1971, a road crews equipment kept mysteriously breaking down near a big rock. Locals said it was an elf church. They moved the road. Equipment worked fine. In 1982, workers in Reykjavik claimed they heard screams when they tried to move a boulder. The project stalled until the rock was carefully relocated. In 2013, a highway project near Reykjavik was literally delayed because protesters said the road would destroy elf habitat. The government compromised and rerouted it. This isn't folklore. This is minutes from a city council meeting. Now, let's debunk. Do Icelandic politicians actually believe in elves? Well, kinda. But not in the Santa's helpers making toys way. It's more cultural. Elves in Iceland are tied to respect for nature, tradition, and community. Saying the elves live there is shorthand for, that rock formation is unique and meaningful, don't wreck it. It's environmentalism with better marketing. Because let's be honest, nobody's going to protest a road for geological preservation. But if you say, the elves will get mad? Boom. Media coverage, national debate, and a bunch of engineers nervously looking over their shoulders. And here's the irony. Even though most Icelanders will say, of course elves aren't literally real, you'll never catch them bulldozing elf rocks just to prove a point. Because if you're wrong? Congrats, you just made the entire hidden people community your enemy. It's like saying you don't believe in Wi-Fi. You might not understand how it works, but you're not going to risk unplugging it. Let's modernize this. Iceland's elf debates are basically the original NIMBY politics. Except instead of don't build here, I like my view, it's don't build here, or the hidden people will hex you. It's also kind of like blaming Mercury retrograde when your car won't start. Sure, maybe it's the alternator. But isn't it more fun to say the cosmos is personally sabotaging you? But here's the best part, politicians take it seriously. Imagine Congress holding a session to debate whether gnomes are okay with a new interstate highway. Or the UK Parliament stalling Brexit because the fairies aren't happy. That's Iceland. Straight-faced government officials actually rerouting roads for invisible tenants. And it works as PR. Tourists love it. Journalists eat it up. Iceland gets branded as this magical, mystical land where folklore is alive. The elf myth brings in cash, boosts national identity, and makes politics way more entertaining. Honestly, more governments should adopt this strategy. Why did the subway budget double? Oh, trolls under the bridge demanded royalties. So, debunk time. Are elves literally consulting Iceland's parliament? No. Do politicians factor in cultural beliefs to avoid backlash? Yes. Is it really about elves, or about protecting tradition and nature? Definitely the latter. But does anyone want the boring version? Of course not. Elves veto highway is way better copy. Confession booth time. If you were an Icelandic politician and your career depended on either bulldozing through an elf rock or rerouting the road, what would you do? Be bold and risk angering the hidden people? Or play it safe and take the scenic detour? Personally, I'd take the detour. Even if elves aren't real, you do not want to be remembered as that guy who pissed off Iceland's entire folklore. So the takeaway? The elf debates aren't really about elves. They're about culture, respect for nature, and a nation's willingness to mix tradition with modern politics. But the myth? That's what sticks. Because Elves Delay Highway is the kind of headline that makes you stop scrolling.